Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Sunday main slate video. I can't wait to get into this one. Week 3 is going to be a great week over here on Draftkings. Just so many great matchups this week. I do want to get into this video pretty quick because it's going to be a little bit longer than normal. But one thing I do want to say to you guys, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to start asking a question at the start of the video, and I want to see more comments down below. So every week I'm going to give kind of a 1v1 or who's your favorite between this little group of guys at the same position. And I want to know who you think is going to do the best. And the first comment to leave the correct answer of who did the best will get $5 either Venmo or PayPal from me. And this week my question is, out of Run CMC, Zeke, and Saquon, who is going to do the best out of the three? Leave your Venmo or PayPal in the comment section with your answer. And then I will obviously announce the winner in the next video. This will be a little bit longer because I want to go into all my thoughts on Sunday. I'm not doing a first thoughts and a final thoughts video this week. It just felt kind of awkward with the first thoughts being Wednesday and then the final thoughts being recorded on Friday. But I work Saturdays, so it just has to work out that way. But we're going to try it this way and see how it goes. But without further ado, let's jump into the quarterback position. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like the QB position is a very, very important one to get right this week. I normally like to pay down. I probably won't even be paying down in this range in cash this week. I'm really just going to be pretty much cash and tournaments. I'm either going to hit this little plus sign right here and stick Patrick Mahomes in there, or I'm going to hit this plus sign right here and stick in Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of good QBs out there this week, though. If Tom Brady plays, he's a good play. I really like him this week. I think that it's either going to be James White, Antonio Brown, or even Julian Edelman or Josh. He's just got too many weapons. I'm not too high on Sony Michel. I know Nick Chubb had a 20-yard touchdown run against the Jets on Monday Night Football this past Monday, but I'm more excited about the throwing game there, the passing game for New England at home against the Jets, just because everybody knows New England's a huge favorite, but I just feel like it's one of those, it's a division game. They're at home. Bill Belichick he's just too good. I could care less about the team. I feel like Bill Belichick could go make the Detroit Lions Super Bowl champions. But looking down more in that mid to upper price range, this is about as low as it's really going to go, down to about 5,500 for me this week, 54. Dak Prescott is a good play if you are okay with hoping that he goes nuts in 3 quarters, because if he plays the 4th quarter, I would be surprised. I expect him to be up 35-0 by then. Same thing with his backfield, Zeke. The Dallas players scare me for that reason. I'm pretty confident they'll all hit value, so I'm not too scared to play them in cash. Like I said, though, for cash, I just don't see myself not going with one of these top 2 QBs. It's just, Baltimore playing in Kansas City should just be an absolute shootout. If I'm not paying up for one of these two, I'm either going to be pivoting off of them with down low. I hate to say this, but Jameis Winston's in a great spot this week. I don't hate a Jameis play. Probably, definitely not actually in cash. But if you are looking for more of a tournament QB, Jameis could always hit that 30 to 35 point week, especially playing at home against the Giants secondary. I'm trying to remember his name. In the Giants secondary, I think it's like their 3rd DB, DeAndre. I think it's DeAndre Baker. They're like 11 for 13. Opposing QBs are throwing against DeAndre Baker for like over 250 yards or something and 2 touchdowns. The opposing QBR is like 158.3, which is as good as it gets. I'm okay with playing Jameis for tournaments this week. I'm also very high on Matt Stafford. Definitely going to be some Lions bias coming out of me when I say that, but I think Matthew Stafford makes for a great tournament play. I think this Detroit-Philly game could shoot out. It could be kind of a sneaky shootout this week. I don't really think a lot of people are talking about it. With the Carson Wentz's top 2 weapons, D-Jax and Alshon hurt. Of course, he's got Zach Ertz still and Nelson Aguilar with the deep balls. I'm not too high on Carson Wentz to be that QB that's going to get you a lot of points, but I think his pass catchers still could do very well. Nelson Aguilar is a great value play because he's got a decent floor with the target share he'll be getting with those 2 guys out. But I think if I was going to pick a QB from this game, it would definitely be Matt Staff. And then my favorite there's your value QBs, there's your high price QBs, and then my favorite kind of mid price guy is going to be Josh Allen. I was on Josh Allen week 1. I was on Josh Allen week 2, and after what Jimmy G did to Cincinnati, Josh Allen's got slate breaking potential. If he throws the same way that Jimmy G did last week against Cincy, I mean, and he only threw the ball 25 times, but they put up 41 points, 3 touchdowns. Josh Allen's going to throw more than that, number one. Number two, he's also going to take more deep chances against that Cincy defense. My question is if Cincy can keep up with them, and I think that they can. It's tough because Joe Mixon hasn't got anything going this year. I still don't think he's 100% healthy, and the Bills have a stingy run D, so it's kind of going to be on Andy Dalton and John Ross and Tyler Boyd to get some stuff going. But I don't hate that game either as more of a tournament play. But we're gonna talk more about cash and build more of a cash lineup here. Gonna go ahead and stick in Lamar. That's my preferred of him and Patrick Mahomes. I'll take the $600 savings and just pivot on Lamar. I think he's probably gonna be more popular anyway, Lamar Jackson. I just think that any team playing against Kansas City is a better play because they're going to have to keep up. You know Patrick Mahomes is going to do well, but the way that the Baltimore offense has looked is pretty stout. Then coming over here, this is where it's kind of a gray area for me. That's why I wanted to ask this at the start of the video. These top 3 guys, yes, Zeke is going to run for 100 yards and a touchdown probably within the first 20 minutes of the game. I'd be kind of surprised if it was halftime and he did not already have 100 yards from scrimmage. Saquon Barkley, we saw Tampa Bay just shut down Christian McCaffrey, but what worries me is if it was a good Tampa Bay defense, which was unexpected for them to have a good run D this year, or if it was just a really poor showing from Carolina, and obviously it was from Cam. I mean, Christian McCaffrey being held to 7.3 points on 16 rushing attempts and 6 targets. I mean, that's pretty low volume for Christian McCaffrey, though. I mean, he had 30 looks, I guess. 19 touches, 11 targets. He had 29 touches, but I mean, 16 and 6. That's pretty low for McCaffrey, and I'm sure a lot of people are probably thinking the same thing. I think the safest play in this range is actually going to be Zeke. I personally am going to prefer Christian McCaffrey because I think this game has a better chance to be competitive. Zeke is going to have a really high floor, but his ceiling is definitely capped from a blowout here. I would definitely go ahead and plug in Christian McCaffrey personally. But I do, like I said at the start of the video, I'm curious to hear your take. And then if you come down here a little bit more, Dalvin Cook, just absolute chalk. He's just going to be a great play this week at home against Oakland. I mean, his volume is just insane, but he's also been super productive on the touches he's getting. He's getting a little bit involved in the passing game, which is okay with me. It's great, honestly. I just hate how chalky he's becoming. I mean, obviously, if he keeps it up, his price tag should be up here with the. It should be at least 8,400, I would think, next week if he has another 30-point outing. But if we come down here a little bit more, my favorite running back this week is not Austin Eckler. A lot of people are going to be on him. He's a great cash game play. And then if you come down, obviously Le'Veon Bell, I want to mention him. He's going to get insane usage, but they're playing in New England. So I think Le'Veon's actually a really good play for tournaments. I think it'll be contrarian because you got to understand if he gets one touchdown and breaks 100 yards, either rushing or receiving, he's going to have 50 yards rushing or receiving. You know, I see him having 150 yards in this game. It's just about if he can get that 100-plus bonus in one of the two and a touchdown, then he's really just going to be a monster this week. My favorite running back, if he plays, as I believe he will, is Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack playing at home against Atlanta, his usage is also just nuts with 25 and 20 in terms of touches for the past 2 games. The Tennessee defense has a pretty stingy front. They looked really well against Nick Chubb, when they played Cleveland week 1. And then week 2, they obviously limited Marlon Mack pretty steadily there. You could also use that if you're watching this video today to kind of get off Fournette a little bit. I personally won't be getting off Fournette just because I don't think he's fadeable tonight. But I'm plugging in Marlon Mack for that reason, though. I think he's just going to be an absolute monster. And then I don't want to get off the running backs quite yet. There's one more guy I wanted to mention. Actually, it's a duo. There's two duos that are both scary to me this week, and that's going to be Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, who have had almost identical touches. 7 targets, 11 rushing attempts last week, and then if you come over here to Phillip Lindsay, 13 rushes and 7 targets. Phillip Lindsay had 2 more rushing attempts. Doesn't mean too much, but at the same time, they're almost the exact same price. For this week, going against Green Bay, I personally prefer Phillip Lindsay. I'm pretty sure most people prefer Royce Freeman. I think Phillip Lindsay is going to have the better outing of the two this week. And then I can't go without mentioning Matt Breida and Mostert down here. Raheem Mostert, he was so productive last week with 13 rushing attempts, 4 targets, and just kind of breaking some serious yardage. 140 something. 151 scrimmage yards last week. And then Matt Breida had way more usage. No, he didn't. I thought he had more rushing attempts, but either way, Matt Breida is priced up compared to Mostert. I think Mostert's probably the better play just for the savings you're getting on him. There's $700 in savings there if you come off of Breida to go to Mostert. I wouldn't be surprised if Mostert played most of the game and got more volume too, because I think San Fran will make Pittsburgh look pretty bad in this game. I think Mason Rudolph's got a chance with the team because he's got some weapons, but at the same time, after what we saw last week, I think that they will take a pretty big lead, and Mostert will get most of the work. Coming over to wide receiver, though, my insta lock, and this little Q by his name is new, limited at practice, maintenance related. So yeah, he'll probably play. Keenan Allen, that's my lock. I won't be fading him in anything. He's looking like the Keenan Allen from 2 years ago, where 10 targets, 15 targets. It's like if you're paying $7,000 for a guy that gets 9+ targets, that's great. If you're paying $7,000 for a guy who's going to get double-digit targets, that's really good. He's a lock for me in all formats, tournaments, cash, everything like that. Of course, like I said, though, we're kind of targeting more of a cash build right here on the right. Another guy at wide receiver, there's a lot of these top-tier guys that I think are not going to be paid up for. Everywhere from A, B up, I think is going to be pretty contrarian. I don't see a lot of everybody wants to pay for these guys over here, rightfully so. Zeke, Barkley, and Run CMC are going to be and Dalvin Cook and Austin Eckler. They're all going to be chalky. I don't know if I will be fading Dalvin Cook in my real cash lineup. I personally would probably come off of CMC for Dalvin. I meant to say that before I got onto wide receivers, just because Dalvin Cook's going to be at least 30% owned, I feel like, in cash this week. So for the sake of the video, I'll plug him in over there, but it's also really tough to not take any of these top 3 RBs over here. But on this wide receiver, let's see. The wide receiver chart, though, I mean, like I said, these top 8 guys are going to be pretty contrarian here. Top 6 guys, excuse me. Hopkins will probably play. That's also a pretty new questionable tag that popped up yesterday. I think he'll be playing against the Chargers in LA. I don't hate that as a more tournament-based play, paying up for the wide receivers and then going cheap with like Phillip Lindsay and Mostert at running back. If you wanted to go like Adams, I think will be very low owned against Chris Harris there, but they're at home, and Aaron Rodgers, we all know Aaron Rodgers any given week could throw for 3 touchdowns plus and 300 yards, and Devontae Adams will be the largest benefactor of that. One of the chalkiest plays I think is actually going to be Chris Godwin. I think Chris Godwin's going to garner a lot of ownership here because of his matchup with that weak Giants secondary. But between him and Mike Evans, I'm personally going to prefer Mike Evans. Not really a question for me. Mike Evans is going to see the most time on DeAndre Baker that I mentioned. I don't think you need to pair him with Jameis Winston, but I think it's a pretty good tournament play if you do. If you were to do that, you would save $1,600 off of Lamar Jackson, but I think Lamar, like I said, has just got a higher ceiling, higher floor going against Kansas City. I do like Mike Evans quite a bit this week, and I don't think he'll be super high owned, but I think a lot of people are going to kind of realize he's a great play. And then this is definitely a more GPP play, but Adam Thielen, they're just not throwing the ball as much as you need them to be able to, I guess just play him in cash. I mean, you just can't do it. If they're not throwing the ball, if Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball between 10 and 22 times a game, you can't just play his receivers. Even if he gets 8 targets last week, it just doesn't make sense to me. You can play Dalvin Cook 24/7, but it just doesn't make sense to me to play a receiver where the QB is only throwing 22 times, even if his target share is 25%. That's less than 6 targets on average. So I'm not going to be playing him anywhere near cash this week. Another guy I wanted to mention, though, like I said, I think the Buffalo game makes for a pretty sneaky stack. Tyler Boyd, I just don't think he's expensive enough. I think he's just too cheap. 11 targets, 10 targets. I think he's very cash viable this week against Buffalo. With that stingy run defense, I think he's a great play. I also think Kenny Golladay, after what we just saw with Julio and Calvin Ridley, I think that Kenny Golladay is an amazing play in Philadelphia. I don't think Kerryon Johnson's going to do too much this week. I think they're going to go back to what they did week 1 and let Stafford get those, just put some air under the ball and start slinging it again, which I thought was really cool to see as a Lions fan week 1 when they finally let him throw the ball again instead of running it every single play like they did last year. Let's see. I didn't mean to click that. If you come down, though, a little bit more, John Brown, just the number 1 target for Josh Allen, obviously. I think he's just going to be a good play every week until they just have, until they're playing like Denver. And he's lined up with a seriously talented corner. I think he's a great play this week. I think he's just a super big, deep threat, kind of like a Marquise Goodwin from last week. I'm on John Brown this week. You don't have to pair him with Josh Allen. I think if you do that, again, it's more of a tournament play. My favorite player in the game is probably going to be John Ross. I'm okay with playing John Ross in cash, too. Tyler Boyd had 11 targets, 10 targets. That's 21. John Ross has had 12 and 8, which is 20 total. If he's averaging 10 and Tyler Boyd's averaging 10, I'll save the $1,400 and I'll stick with John Ross down here. I also just think he's too fast for anybody in that Buffalo secondary to really hang. He doesn't even have a great matchup against the Buffalo secondary there, but at the same time, I think the run defense is going to be so much harder on the Joe Mixon and the Bengals. I think that John Ross is a great play this week because they're going to have to score through him or Tyler Boyd probably. And then old man Larry Fitz and then the young man Christian Kirk. This is a coin toss for me. The difference is $100, and I don't know which one to go with, honestly. I think I personally am going to prefer Kirk, even though Larry Fitz has had the larger target share. I just think Kirk is kind of a better play for some reason this week. After what we saw last week, Mike Evans is technically the number 1 wide receiver in Tampa, but Chris Godwin's kind of starting to surpass him, and I think we're going to see the same thing with Kirk and Fitz starting this week. I think Christian Kirk's going to have a pretty big game. I'm okay with playing him in tournaments, definitely not cash. One guy that I am okay with for value in cash and tournaments, though, is Emmanuel Sanders. I'm going to click him in because I think that he is going to be an absolute animal. I think against Green Bay, he should have a really big week this week. He's just Joe Flacco's premier target. Courtland Sutton looked great week 1 against Oakland. But when you're getting 13 targets against Chicago's defense, I can't make an excuse not to play you against Green Bay's defense. I do want to go ahead and do this real quick before we go to tight end and the flex. I made this mistake last week, and I will not make it again for the rest of the season. I will pay up to $5,000 for any defense playing against Miami. Not even going to talk about it. I don't think there's any point in saving money at defense this week at all. I think if you can lock in a defense that's going to hopefully and potentially shut out this team and probably score a touchdown from what we've seen, I'm just going to pay up for them. Every single week I'll take the defense playing Miami if I can. If you do want to be really tournament play, GPP sort of play, I'm okay with taking the Saints defense. I wanted to say that real quick because I think the Saints defense is going to get sacks against Russell Wilson. I also think this team's going to have a slower tempo without Drew Brees there. They weren't that high in pace already, but their defense, they will sack Russell Wilson. They will sack Russell Wilson. They have a great run defense, and as long as Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf just don't break a super long one, I could see this being a very low-scoring game, even with the 12th man there in Seattle. I don't hate the Saints defense at all. Also, the Lions defense, I do want to mention it too because of all those weapons being down for Philly. I don't hate the Lions defense. They're going to take away the run completely with Snacks Harris in the middle, and then the All-Pro Darius Slay on the outside should kind of limit Nelson Aguilar, who he should see quite a bit of time on. And then Arcega-Whiteside too, I'm assuming will probably be pretty quiet in this game. So I'm not really on those two for value at wide receiver, even though they're cheap at like 36 and 35. Yeah, 3,500 for Arcega, and then 36 for Nelson Aguilar. But now that we got our defense plugged in, if we move over here to tight end this week, it's pretty simple for me. I'm going to go with, there's two guys that I want. I'm not paying all the way up unless it's a tournament play. I'm either going here, Mark Andrews for 4,600, or I'm going with Greg Olsen at 3,700. If I'm not taking Christian McCaffrey, I'm taking Greg Olsen. I don't think you have to play Cam if you play both of them, but I would prefer to make a tournament lineup with both of them and Cam Newton. I just love Greg Olsen this week. Arizona is just one of the worst so far this year at defending opposing tight ends, and Greg Olsen, I expect him to play this week too. But he's got 9 targets, and I like old man Greg Olsen this week a lot. We saw what T.J. Hawkinson did to Arizona. We saw what Mark Andrews did to Arizona. If it's not Mark Andrews for me this week, it's going to be Greg Olsen, and that leaves us 4,500 with our flex. And then this is where it gets kind of tricky for me because I think everybody in this 4 to 5K range, I think it's just kind of ugly because it's all just decent floors, but just sketchy plays, I think. If we were to switch, let's look at the options real quick. But I mean, if Singletary doesn't play, I think Frank Gore is a good play. It's hard to take Frank Gore just because we all know how old he is, but I don't hate him this week if Singletary misses. I really actually like Philip Lindsay this week. I've plugged him into a few lineups already. I think he's just a good play. But if I'm not playing him, I'm definitely going to be kind of paying up a little bit to either Cortland Sutton or Carlos Hyde, even in cash. It's tough to take Sutton and Emmanuel Sanders. That's 2 of Joe Flacco's targets, which is just kind of it's not a very comfortable feeling in cash to take 2 of Flacco's targets on the road in Green Bay. I think Carlos Hyde's going to get the work against that Chargers defense, who did not look great against Kerryon Johnson and looked horrible against Marlon Mack. If Carlos Hyde's getting 20 touches, 4,500 for a running back getting 20 touches, when I'm paying 7,800 for a running back getting 20 touches, it doesn't make sense. I understand the efficiency, but it doesn't make sense to me to see him that cheap after a 20-touch week. I know it's just the first week of it, but I think this might be the cheapest we see Carlos Hyde for the rest of the year. I think he's going to have a decent year, and I prefer him over Duke Johnson personally. So I'm okay with playing Carlos Hyde in cash, and that's one option. But if we were to come off of Greg Olsen and Hyde and then pay up for Mark Andrews, that way we have one of Lamar's targets. If we plug Andrews in there, that leaves us with 3,600 for the flex, and this is where you're going to it's not really a big question for me at this point. I'm not playing 2 tight ends in cash pretty much ever. All I'm going to do is just basically stick in Nelson Aguilar, and I think that's also another good variation. The wide receivers this week are a little bit tricky, but like I said, Keenan Allen's a lock. I think John Ross is just way too cheap for his volume. Emmanuel Sanders, way too cheap for his volume. Nelson Aguilar should get at least, I think, 6 targets with all of those weapons hurt. And then it's nice to always have 1 target for your QB. And Mark Andrews, obviously, after what he's done these first 2 weeks, is still just too cheap. And then Marlon Mack is somebody that a lot of people are probably not going to be on, I don't think. I think a lot of people are going to go cheap with like Carlos Hyde or somebody like that at running back, or they're just going to pay all the way up. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for cash. And then when it comes to tournaments, like I said, I'm probably still going to stick in one of these 2 here. For tournaments, it's probably just going to be Patrick Mahomes, and I'm probably going to pay up at tight end for Travis Kelce. I just think that's kind of the more contrarian play for that Baltimore game. And then I also think Sammy Watkins could have a pretty big week this week, and that's just kind of a KC stack. I know it's not going to be super low owned or anything like that, but that's where you got to build around it with some of the more low owned guys. here at the wide receiver. I would probably look to pay up more at wide receiver and go cheap at running back. If we were to go cheap at running back, I'm okay, like I said, with Phillip Lindsay. And I really just don't want to miss out on Marlon Mack this week if he plays as he should. I think he's just too good. I think he's in too good of a spot and getting too much volume not to play him. I will not be fading the Cowboys defense in any format. It doesn't make sense to me. And then again, this is the weirdest, most uncomfortable price range for me this week, that 4 to 5K range. I just don't like any of the plays that really jump out to me other than Emmanuel Sanders, who I expect will get some pretty good ownership this week. But for a tournament lineup, I'm going to lock in Christian Kirk. I think he's going to have a huge week. And I think that playing him along with the Kansas City stack, these are all decent floor guys, but I mean, they're all not going to be like 15+% owned. I don't think they will be anyway. I don't have my ownership projections out yet. When I do, it'll be a little bit easier to check that stuff out. And then I think Arcega-Whiteside is actually a really good tournament play. He hasn't looked good. I think he had a really big drop last when they played Atlanta. I don't know if it says it down here. Yeah, I don't think it says it down here, but I'm pretty sure I saw him drop a ball against Atlanta. It might have been somebody else. But just with his weak production so far, I don't hate him as a tournament play. I know that for Philly, if we go over here to Philadelphia, it doesn't say. Yeah, it says doubtful and questionable. I think they both miss. Djax is supposed to miss about 2 weeks. And then Alshon, I don't think plays. Held out of Wednesday's walkthrough day-to-day with a calf injury. I just don't think either one of them play. If they don't, I think Arcega-Whiteside's a good tournament play. I want to get off that. And then if we do look, if for any reason Alshon does play, I'm not plugging Arcega-Whiteside in there. I would probably look more towards somebody like Danny Amendola. As uncomfortable as that is, playing a third target, fourth target for Matt Stafford there against Philly. He's got that Calvin Ridley-esque sort of receiver. I mean, not low ADOT, but still a shorter pass and then yards after catch type of guy. And he's going to get you those clutch first downs. Looked like Stafford's best friend in week 1, and then all of a sudden he just gets one target for no catches last week, which was weird. So it could be up and down for him. But I don't hate him at all this week at going against that Philadelphia secondary. And then that's really about it. And I'm going to assume that those two guys do miss and plug in Arcega-Whiteside for the sake of this lineup. And that leaves us 5,600 in our flex. I'm not going to be super high on Terrell Williams against Xavier Rhodes. It's a decent contrarian play, just not something I'm super high on. At this price point, I'm probably going to be looking between a few guys. I'll probably be looking between, let's see. I don't mind leaving some salary on the table and going with John Ross here. But I would prefer to pay up a little bit higher for somebody like Josh Gordon, who is just going to be overlooked. He's way too cheap. But with all the weapons New England has, if you pick the right weapon between Edelman, AB, and Josh Gordon, it's the same thing as the running backs. If you pick the right one, it's going to pay off big. I'm okay with paying for Josh Gordon here as the last spot. And then if you're not going to, if that's a little bit too risky for you, which I don't think it is, then I would go somewhere that's just a little bit safer, like John Brown. And then if you want to really roll some dice on this last position here, I think Joe Mixon is just too cheap. I don't care what he's done this year, and I know I said I still don't think he's 100%. He's not getting the volume that we're used to him getting. He's gonna bounce back. He's too talented not to. I don't hate playing Joe Mixon at all this week against Buffalo. Stingy run defense, I know, but for 5,500. Best case scenario, Buffalo makes them look horrible, and then next week we get them for 5,200. So that's what I would be looking at, more of a KC stack, and then some cheaper fill-ins that are a little bit less popular. I won't be playing anything except for the Cowboys defense this week. So if Miami goes out there and scores 42 points, I want you all to come back to this video and laugh at me. Otherwise, I do wish everybody good luck this week, and I hope that we all get some cash. And then if you have not already, please go over here to dfs-squid.com, make an account, register, and then come over here and go ahead and get signed up. And then once you're signed up, all you have to do is come over here to the NFL lineups, go get the doc, and then once you get the doc, you'll have the sheet right here. We went ahead and changed it up a little bit, so now we have tabs. So we're going to have Showdown lineups, DraftKings lineups, FanDuel lineups. It'll show everybody's salary and things like that. So make sure that you're aware of that. So that way when you click it, you're not just like looking at the one DraftKings page and you're like, well, how do I plug in my FanDuel lineups? Where are those? So we tried to make it a little bit more convenient rather than having a big sheet of everything just right in your face. So if you do have any questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments below as always. And until Saturday, I should have a video up maybe tomorrow night. If not tomorrow, Friday night. It'll be up by Saturday. Make sure that you do check that video out. That's going to be the Sunday primetime slate or showdown slate. I'm not sure yet. I might cover a little bit of both in one video. But tonight we do have Jags Titans, and our lineups are going to be posted there in the doc. So make sure that you get on over there, check them out, get the bread with us tonight because this is going to be a pretty easy showdown slate to cash on, I think. And like I said before, good luck to everybody, and let's have a great week 3.